Today, we are talking about the happiness gap and the treadmill that a lot of high achievers get on, where they keep running and chasing a goal and they forget to enjoy the journey. I'm also using examples of losing weight and changing our eating habits that you can apply to any situation in your life and how to gain more happiness. So, thanks for being here. Welcome to Burnout Solutions. My name is Mona Tippett. I am a registered nurse, a life coach, an emotional resiliency expert, and a mom. I love to help healthcare workers and caretakers and just busy, capable people understand their brain and nervous system so stress, overwhelm, and frustration do not run their life. Here on this podcast, we break down burnout, emotional overload, and survival patterns in simple human language. I love to give you practical ways to feel safer, calmer, and more present in your everyday life. You do not need fixing. What you need is support and a nervous system that knows that it's safe. Thanks for being here. Hello, and welcome back to Burnout Solutions. Today, we are in episode number 5 in our series of Work and Play. Today, we are talking a lot about kind of performance versus happiness. I've been thinking a lot. This is actually the second time I am doing this podcast. I did it yesterday, and it was pre-graduation for one of my sons, and I have just thought a lot about it since then. And so I'm just going to record it again. At the graduation, it was just so interesting to see how these high school kids were acting and how happy they were. It was super fun to watch them. It was great to listen to the valedictorian. I know that kid. Great job, Liam. He's been one of my son's really good friends throughout the years. They're not that close right now, but he's been on our boat. He is an amazing violinist. Maybe he plays the cello. I can't remember. All of his siblings play. Their family has created an orchestra and they travel and they play during holidays and for weddings. And it's just helped him, I think, develop a good habit of trying hard and applying himself. And he has taken that in lots of ways. He's also mountain biked with my family. And anyway, it was just really great to hear him talk. Part of my brain also says, high school graduation shouldn't be as big of a deal as it is because at least in our state, you have to go to school at least until you're 16. And so it's this big celebration of things that you have been almost forced to do. And maybe college graduations should be celebrated even more. There was also a text thread amongst my extended family if you should even go to graduations and how painful they are and how long they are. And, there's both sides of that. But it was great. There were 500-ish graduates, and we were in and out in 90 minutes and taking lots of pictures. It was fun, again, to see my son with all different groups of friends throughout his career. And I was glad that he made it. I've talked to lots of parents who have been on both sides of the spectrum with we're barely squeaking by to we are just so proud and our kid has gone above and beyond. Anyway, with that being said, let's talk about high achievers. Let's talk about when you get to your goal and if it actually brings the amount of satisfaction and happiness as you thought it would. Because often when we set a goal, think about graduation. Most of these kids really did work for it. They sacrificed, some of them, with other professions and other graduations. There's training involved. There's different degrees. After we graduate, we get a title, we get our perfect job, we get a house, a new car, whatever. That accomplishment and the recognition, we get the gold star. And sometimes it just doesn't feel the way that we thought it would. And that high can fade really fast and sometimes way faster than expected. And often our brain has already moved on to the next thing before that satisfaction has even landed. And if that has happened to you, and maybe that bothers you, I don't know, I've thought about it a lot. Maybe you think, what's wrong with me? Why is this never enough? And if you have one of those brains that once you get the reward, the recognition, the title, it's almost kind of a letdown. I want you to know that there's nothing wrong with your brain and that your brain is doing exactly what evolution designed it to do. And that design has actually a specific, well documented flaw for high achievers. And today I'm actually going to talk about that and use some examples to help you understand it and how you can do something about it. I'm going to talk about some things again I've learned from Arthur Brooks, and he calls this a happiness gap, the distance between how happy our achievements promise to make us and how happy they actually do. There's a book called The Gap and the Gain. And anyway, I've just thought a lot about this. So there is something that psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. And at the gym this morning, I was watching people on the treadmill thinking about it. So say that you're running on a treadmill and you're working hard, you're moving fast, and you're giving everything that you have. And at the very front of the treadmill, maybe just slightly out of reach, is the thing that you really want, such as the promotion, the graduation, the salary, the recognition, the new car, the new house, moving to your perfect job, the milestone, the accomplishment, whatever. And you're running towards it. And you get it, you reach it, and you feel it for a moment. And you really can get a flash of elation, the arrival, I did it. And then almost immediately, that treadmill starts to reset. And that thing that you just achieved becomes, the new floor. So you've gone up a level and you have a new baseline. And that amount of achievement actually does become your ordinary. And in your brain, you create a new goal. And that new goal appears just slightly out of reach in front, and you start running again. Now, this treadmill doesn't stay at the same speed. It is like there's somebody at the front turning up the speed, and pretty soon you're just running so that you avoid falling off the back. And that achievement that would have satisfied you maybe 2-5 years before now barely registers. And this is the explanation of the hedonic treadmill. And this is not a character flaw. This is not something that you should shame yourself for creating, but this is actually a feature of the human nervous system based on the search for dopamine. I've talked about the motivational triad that our brain has, and one of them is to seek pleasure, and that is because of dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that we often think of as a happiness chemical. It's actually an anticipation chemical, and it fires in the pursuit, not the arrival. And we were designed to want this. We were designed to seek, to chase, and kind of that drive kept our ancestors alive, but it was never designed to produce a lasting satisfaction through achievement. That's not what this chemical does, and yet our brains really want it. Think about eating sugary, fatty foods. It gives us a dopamine hit, and we just want more of it. And we never get that satisfaction. Now, for high achievers, overachievers, these alma maters and valedictorians, and again, nothing wrong. I understand these people, but it can get pretty brutal because you are more skilled at achieving than most people. You've developed these habits. You've developed these expectations for yourself. Your parents have, whoever. Your teachers have. You are always at the top, and that continues. And so you often cycle through the treadmill even faster. And so the milestones that you're chasing arrive a little bit sooner, and that reset happens more rapidly. The speed increases, and you can end up feeling more depleted, not less, than someone who has achieved far less, simply because you are running faster and faster and faster. And in your brain, you still haven't arrived, right? You've become a marathon runner, and the marathons just keep getting longer. Arthur Brooks does say that this is a trap that he calls the striver's curse, and that is the inability to hold on to satisfaction after reaching a goal. Because our brain doesn't say, okay, how far have I come? It just says, how far do I still have to go? And that is the trap. And guess what? The answer is always, you still need to go further. It's always, I need to go further. I used to be a health coach and I would help people lose weight. I've talked about this before. And let's just pause for a minute and use this example. If you want to lose weight, pretty much any diet you try will work within reason. I don't know of anybody who's promoting eating highly processed foods, high carb, sugar, and fat that will actually help your biomarkers improve and your waistline decrease, right? All of the diets, we're cutting something out, or we are increasing a macronutrient and cutting back on others. And we often increase our motion, or we just go into a lot of restriction. And so a lot of diets work. But again, the diet industry is a several billions of dollar industry, and people are constantly trying to lose the weight. And we often have a number in our mind that we want the scale to show. And so when we reach that desired weight, we might feel good for a while, right? We're so proud of ourselves. But at that moment, that's when we stop maintaining what we've been doing more often than not. I mean, most people who lose weight within a year, they've gained it back. And sometimes people have even doubled the amount that they've lost. Or maybe we developed an eating disorder, or maybe we've done something extreme, cut out sugar and flour completely, whatever. I'm not here to argue what diet is better and not, but we often do things that are not sustainable. And so once we reach that number, we go back to our old habits of our eating and motion, and we got that dopamine hit from arriving, but we lost ourselves in that journey. And from a nervous system point of view, the nervous system has learned to associate safety and worth with achievement. And in weight loss, it's I will be more valuable, I will be more attractive, I will be more accepted, I will be judged less, et cetera, when I am at a certain weight. Okay, that is a lie. That is a thought problem. I say this several times. All problems are thought problems. And so we need to do other things. And just like with weight, and when that achievement plateaus, the moment that the treadmill resets, the system reads that as a signal of danger. And so we have an increase in mobilization. And that's when we start to push more, and it drives us towards our next goal. Not always do we really want it, but because our nervous system has learned that standing still isn't safe. Somehow it's learned that if I'm not pushing myself, white knuckling it, striving for the next thing, then I'm doing something wrong. So how do we change that? Well, we learn to enjoy things in the journey. We learn to be an athlete who loves to play the game over an athlete who loves to win. We become a person who changes our dietary preferences and changes our eating palate. Did you know that's possible? It is. To be somebody who I enjoy eating healthy foods. I enjoy loving vegetables. Is that possible? It absolutely is. And I laugh at myself because we went out to dinner last night to a restaurant, and the food was, it was okay. It was okay. It wasn't great. My kids got these specialty lemonades and I tasted them. They were okay. I always order water. Why? Because I just prefer water. And I take a sip of my kids. And I'm not even like those parents who take a sip and actually drink the whole drink. No, I just take a sip to taste it. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, that's okay. And we leave the restaurant. Today we had to-go boxes, and I thought my favorite thing that I ate last night was a salad. Their side salad was really good. There's another restaurant that's like a smokehouse place. They have a lot of really good smoked meats, and they have an amazing salad. And every time I go there, I'm like, I love this salad. It is so good. Okay, so I am a person who I actually really like eating vegetables. I actually do. I actually enjoy a really good salad. I love tasting the crunch and the flavors of the vegetables mixed together, et cetera, et cetera. Have I been able to maintain a healthy weight over the last 25 years? Yes. And that is because I have installed habits. If I don't know that I've ever mentioned this, but the first year that I was a nurse, I gained 25 pounds in 1 year because I was eating for emotional distraction, super stressful, eating to stay awake, et cetera, et cetera. And I have since then created habits that have kept me within a healthy weight, I believe. Okay. And learn to enjoy the journey. Learn to enjoy foods that will keep you healthy, keep your biomarkers healthy or exceptional, be the valedictorian in your physical health, whatever. And so how do we do that? I'm going to now talk about the 3 macronutrients of happiness that I have mentioned before, but we're going to go in it. I love this. Achievement doesn't produce lasting happiness. So if achievement doesn't produce lasting happiness, what does? Arthur Brooks says this a lot, that happiness is not a feeling, it is a state from things that you do. And this happiness feeling needs to happen while you are in a ventral vagal state to make it impactful and make it lasting. It's not fear-driven or fear-motivated. It is not avoiding a consequence. It is truly that you are connecting, that you are present, and that is in the ventral vagal area. And again, happiness is built from 3 specific ingredients. Those are enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. And burnout, I want to suggest and stress, is almost always a macronutrient deficiency. It's not just exhaustion. It's not just that I hate my job. It's not that I work with awful people in an awful place. No. It is a starvation of one or more of these essential elements. So let's talk about them. Macronutrient 1 is enjoyment. And I talked about this a little bit, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail. I covered pleasure versus enjoyment in episode 3. But enjoyment is pleasure plus elation. It requires presence. So you cannot enjoy something while mentally being somewhere else. It often requires other people. It is often a shared experience, a connection, which is why a lot of us enjoy eating over a meal, or food is always involved in big parties, right? Food can be connecting. And it's more the social experience while you're eating that is good for your brain. And that is what lifts you. It's a sociality associated with it. And it is something that adds to your life rather than just relieving pressure. Again, sorry to keep talking about food, but how can you enjoy your food more? You savor it. You think about the crunch, the textures, the temperature, the flavors, all of those things. And that helps you enjoy the experience. You're not distracted while you're eating. You're actually in the present eating your food. I think about healthcare workers. Healthcare workers help produce enjoyment for your patients. You're helping them get better. You're seeing them make progress more often than not. And I loved working labor and delivery. I cried at every single birth. It was just such a privilege for me to be part of that experience because I really did feel like I was present at one of the most significant moments of their life. And it makes me emotional just talking about it. And with healthcare workers, we give that gift often. Sometimes, it's really, really hard, but that's what keeps us in it, I think, is that we are helping people be healthier, and a healthier life adds to more enjoyment, I believe. But often as a healthcare worker or a caregiver, even a parent or a teacher, we are giving that gift constantly to other people. And yet the enjoyment macronutrient in our own life is almost never replenished at the same rate that it's extracted because we get sucked into the busyness of life. And when we are giving out of a cup that's rarely refilled, that's when our stress gets too high and we get burned out. So we need to fill ourselves through being present in the micro moments of life. Okay, macronutrient number 2, satisfaction. Satisfaction is different from enjoyment. And this is something that is earned. It is an embodied feeling that comes from doing something genuinely hard and completing it. And as I was looking out at the graduation last night, I thought, this valedictorian, he has worked so hard. He was talking about a mark on his neck from his violin. He's like, it's not a hickey. It is just a mark that is always there from holding my chin on my violin. And it's made this mark on my neck. And he has worked so hard. I've seen this kid. He is confident. He applies himself. And I think when we really do something that's genuinely hard and we apply ourselves and we give of ourselves, something that requires effort and struggle to complete often brings more satisfaction because it's not the same as pleasure. Pleasure can be had easily with no effort, right? Which some of those kids did the absolute minimum to graduate. And satisfaction is the result of something being demanded of you or asked of you, and you apply yourself and you met that demand and often exceeded it. So Arthur Brooks has a formula for satisfaction that I think is totally interesting. He describes it as a ratio of what you have to what you want. And a lot of times this prescription sounds counterintuitive for people, especially high achievers. The path to more satisfaction is not more achievement, though. He said it is wanting less. It is not wanting to keep going and keep going. It is wanting what you have and being present with what you have, managing the denominator rather than expanding the numerator, which I think is hard. In Arthur Brooks' books, he talks about billionaires who are rarely happy. Well, I should have been happier with my first billion, but I wasn't, so let's make more. It doesn't work that way. For healthcare workers, you have historically had abundant satisfaction available to you, like difficult cases that were resolved, the patient that made a miraculous recovery, the code that worked, right? Doing CPR that actually worked, the miracles that you see. But often there's the administrative burden that we have to do. It can sever the connection between the effort that we do and the outcome. You keep working harder and harder than ever. And that hardness increasingly lands in documentation, right? In compliance, in classes, in systems, in all of this stuff that people find so annoying that get in your way in air quotes of doing your job. And we gradually lose sight of the healing and the difference that we help that made the work meaningful. And that satisfaction loop can break and we just forget to be satisfied. Okay, now macronutrient number 3, meaning this is the deepest one and maybe the most important, where a lot of healthcare workers are right now. Meaning has 3 components. So there's coherence, the sense that your life makes sense, that things happen to you for a reason that you can understand, and you look for those reasons. Purpose, which is a direction, a North Star, something you're moving toward, and significance. This is a felt sense that what you do matters. Your life matters. You matter. You are contributing to something that is real in the world. You are making the world a better place, as we like to call it. In my forward-facing training, we talk about Viktor Frankl a lot. And if you haven't heard of him, he's a psychiatrist and he's a Holocaust survivor. And he wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning. So an excellent book. There are parts that are hard to read. But something that I come back to often is that he says humans can endure almost any how if they have a strong enough why. So the suffering, the difficulty, the hardship, right? Whether it's through high school or medical school or nursing school or a relationship, when we have our why and that is our North Star, then the how becomes bearable and even transformative. It even gives us the strength to carry on to our next thing if and when they are held inside of a larger sense of meaning. Now, in healthcare, I think right now, it's not primarily an exhaustion crisis, but it's a meaning crisis because these systems can sometimes force you to act against your values, like discharging a patient too soon. Insurance doesn't cover this, so we need to do X, Y, and Z instead. You are short-staffed, so you're required to help and care for too many people in too little time. You have so much documentation that you need to do, and a lot of our support staff are taken out. And so we are focused on documenting instead of connecting. I think about this with teachers. It's the same thing. The administration needs our students to perform X, Y, and Z on our tests at the end of the year. And so that's what I'm drilling into these students. And we forget to connect. We drop the humanness out of our jobs, and it can damage meaning at its core. And and it can create, which research now calls moral injury. And moral injury isn't burnout, it goes deeper. It's really when you are made to violate the very thing that brought you into your career. And I'm not saying that people are doing things wrong or they're not giving good care. It's giving the same care, but in your mind, you're focused on something else. In your mind, your cares and your teaching becomes a box to check off instead of your passion and your drive that brought you there. So, how do we fix this? It's, guess what? Reconnection, being in the ventral vagal state. It's regular, deliberate, purposeful reconnection with your original why, with other people, with yourself, being vulnerable or being serious in your care with other people, looking them in the eyes, smiling, seeing them as a human, as a person instead of a student or a patient, and reconnecting to your personal why that brought you into the work. You know, I still have patients who I remember their faces. I remember their names. I remember their stories. And that's what keeps me and a lot of healthcare workers still going, right? And teachers and parents. We remember the why and why it mattered. Okay, let's just move on to how can we rebuild these macronutrients? And shocker, spend time in the present. So, as humans, we have a prefrontal cortex, and our prefrontal cortex does a million jobs. One of them is it is very good at going to the future, the past, and the present, right? It has 3 time zones that it often goes to. As humans, a lot of our time is spent thinking about the future. Your dog is very, very, very good at living in the present. They don't have that ability to think about the future or the past as much as we do, if any. And they're always happy to see their owner. And that's because they live in the here and now. Yes, we love our prefrontal cortex because it helps us learn, evaluate from the past. But we have more of our enjoyment, our satisfaction, and our meaning when we can stay in the present. We are much more successful than our dog because of our prefrontal cortex, but we're often less happy. So if you feel like you are deficient in one of these macronutrients, let's do something about it. So here are a few things for each macronutrient. For enjoyment, identify 2 or 3 experiences in the next week that you think, use your prefrontal cortex for the future, that you think will be genuinely enjoyable. Not pleasurable, but enjoyable. And then from episode 3, I talked about 4 different categories like contemplation, creativity, nature, or deep human connection. And you're going to use one of those categories and think, okay, how am I going to use those to make this experience more enjoyable? Plan it, name it, protect this event from being canceled, from being overridden. And then when it comes to the time, you're going to show up with your actual self and you're going to apply yourself and be in the present. For satisfaction, find one hard thing that connects effort to a more meaningful human outcome. So use your humanness, have a difficult conversation, and use kindness and candor. Practice something past the point of easy. Do a creative project and take it to completion, right? Sometimes this is hard. Choose something small that is creative that you can do. Go paint something. Go make something, with wood. Cook a meal, something that asks something real of you and delivers real completion in return. And then when it's done, let that land and don't just keep running on that treadmill. For meaning, think about your original story. The moment that you chose your career, interaction that you had with a patient that you want to remember and handwrite this if you can and post it and read it every few days, whatever. This just helps us remember who we are underneath the role of our profession. Because remember, happiness is not just getting what you want, it's wanting what we already have. And the path to wanting what you already have is gratitude, connection, returning to meaning, not another achievement. Okay, so that is it for today. Thank you for being here. I hope you do take the challenge. If only you rate your macronutrients on a score of 1 to 10, I would do that. Enjoyment, 1 to 10. Where am I? Satisfaction, 1 to 10. Where am I? Meaning, 1 to 10. And just see where you are and then work on one of those to just bump it up one more step. So I just want you to remember that we were never made to run on a treadmill. Our brains were not developed this way. That is just something that we're chasing. And dopamine rarely fills us. It just keeps us wanting for more. So we need to slow down and work on these other things. I really do believe that we were made for a life that has enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning in a very generous daily supply. I really do believe that we can create a life that is better regardless of our profession or our stage of life or things that we're going through right now. And that we do have the tools to help ourselves. If you would like more help with seeing your patterns or any of these things that I've talked about, I would love to help you. Just reach out to me on my website. Thank you for being here, and we will talk to you later. Every week, you're learning something new here on this podcast, and that is a powerful first step. But guess what? Information alone doesn't create transformation. True change happens when you start to think differently and shift the nervous system patterns that drive your behavior. As a coach and an emotional resiliency expert, that is the work I do. I love to walk alongside you, whether it's one-on-one, in a small group that you choose, or with your workplace team. I can help you retrain your brain and nervous system so that stress no longer runs the show. You'll find ways to connect with me in the show notes. Let's do this work together.